This video will be about angle measures. When you look at an angle is formed by two rays that meet at a vertex. You can name an angle either using a number inside, this could be angle 1, the letter at the vertex, it could be angle B, or sometimes you have to use 3 letters, A, B, C, where the vertex is the center letter. You can use 3 letters if maybe there's more than one line coming off the vertex. If there's multiple lines, and we just say angle B, we may not know for sure which angle we're actually talking about. They can also give you the measure inside, so instead of angle 1 here, maybe this is 40 degrees. So the measure of angle B would be the 40 degrees. There's a lot of different types of setups for angles. An angle is supplementary to another angle if they add up to 180 degrees. So when you're on a straight line always adds up to 180 degrees. So angle 1 goes from here to here, and the angle that's 38 degrees goes from here to here. We're going from start to finish all on that straight line. And that makes half the circle, which is where we get the 180 degrees. So if the smaller angle is 38 degrees, we would just subtract, find the measure of angle 1. So 180 minus 38 is 142. So angle 1 would be 142 degrees. Two angles are complementary if they are on a right angle. So this symbol here means it's a right angle, and a right angle is always 90 degrees exactly. So if we wanted to find the measure of angle 1, this time we would do 90 minus the second angle in order to find the measure of angle 1. So 90 minus 15 is 75. So angle 1 equals 75 degrees. Vertical angles are when you have two lines crossing each other, and the angles across from each other are congruent. If this angle is 110, the one across the x is also 110. Now it is also on a straight line, so these are also supplementary. We would do 180 minus 110 to get that this is 70 degrees. But once you do that, now we know across from it is also 70 degrees. We can also have parallel lines cut by a transversal. So when you have parallel lines cut by a transversal, the angles are either congruent or supplementary. If this is 115 degrees, the one across from it is vertical, so that's also 115. And the ones in the same spots, so we have this top left corner to bottom right corner of the two lines crossing, those would be the same. And then down here, same thing. Top left to bottom right. The opposite direction is also true. Again, these are supplementary. It's on a straight line still. So 180 minus 115 is 65 degrees. So the vertical angles are the same. And then that same direction, top right to bottom left, would also be 65 degrees. We can also look at the angles inside of our geometric shapes. If we have a triangle, the angles inside of a triangle add up to 180 degrees. The 180 ends up coming up a lot when we're working with angles. For a quadrilateral, and it can be any quadrilateral, it doesn't have to be like just a rectangle or just a parallelogram. Any quadrilateral adds up to 360 degrees. So for these ones, we usually need a little bit more information. If I wanted to find angle Z, they would have to tell me angle X and angle Y. So if they gave you two of them, we'd want to add those together first, and then subtract that from the total amount of 180. So angle Z would be 20 degrees. On the quadrilateral, they'd have to give you three of the angles, and you can find the fourth one. So one way they can switch it up is to not actually tell you any of the angle measures, just tell you how the two angles compare to each other. So in the figure, angle 1 is twice as big as angle 2. What is the measure of angle 1? Well, we know for sure that we are on a straight line, so that it is supplementary. We know they're going to add to be 180. But then we have to kind of interpret this sentence in order to be able to figure out what would each angle measure equal. So angle 1 is twice as big as angle 2. Twice means multiply by 2. So I'm going to give angle 2 a variable. I'm going to call it x. Then it said angle 1 is twice as big, so it would be 2 times angle 2, which we've called x. So angle 1 is 2x, and angle 2 we called x. Now we've actually now set up an equation we can solve. 2x plus x, and that's really a 1x if there's no number actually written there in front of the x. So 2x plus 1x is 3x. When you have a number next to a variable, that means this is actually multiply, so we have to do the opposite and divide. This gives that x equals 60. Now our answer isn't necessarily 60. We have to go back and look at what they asked for. They asked for the measure of angle 1. If x is 60, angle 2 is just 60 degrees. Angle 1 was twice as big as angle 2. Angle 1 was 2 times x, which we found to be 60. So 2 times 60 is 120. So the measure of angle 1 would be 120 degrees. Another way they can switch it up is to give multiple angles on a straight line, or break up a situation we already know how to solve, but they've switched it just a little bit. So we do know that a straight line is 180 degrees. Normally we only have two things, an angle that's given and an angle we're trying to find. This time we have two angles that are given, and we're trying to find the measure of angle 1. So we have to add these two angles together, 75 plus the 36, which gives us 111, and then we can still use the property that a straight line is 180 degrees and do our subtraction. 180 minus 111 is 69 degrees. So the measure of angle 1 is 69 degrees. Now we're looking at our parallel lines again. Lines A, B, and C are parallel. And instead of actually writing the words that they are parallel, they may just use this symbol. That means A is parallel to B. It's just two little parallel lines, basically. So this is asking, what is the measure of angle 1? So all the angles are either congruent or supplementary. They're either the same measure or they're adding up to 180. So I look for the vertical angles and label them all out to try and get down to angle 1 and see what's going on down here. So 136 is congruent to 136, and then the same direction. We have top left, bottom right of these two crossing lines. So same thing down here, top left, bottom right of the two crossing lines. So angle 1 is not the 136. That means we have to do 180 minus the 136 because they were supplementary. So 10 minus 6 is 4, 7 minus 3 is 4, so the measure of angle 1 would be 44 degrees. Now let's look at a quadrilateral. We have to remember that a quadrilateral does add up to be 360 degrees. Then it says the measure of angle 1 is 3 times as big as angle 2. What is the measure of angle 2? This time instead of 2 times, they said 3 times. So angle 2, instead of calling it 2, I'm going to give it a variable. Let's call it x. And then angle 1 is 3 times angle 2, so 3 times x. We also had these two angle shapes here. We know when it's this little kind of corner piece that means this is a right angle. So each of these are 90 degrees. Everything all added together equals our 360. Every angle inside the quadrilateral has to add together to equal the 360. So this equation is a little bit more difficult to solve, a little bit more going on. The first thing we want to do is combine any like terms on the same side. So 360 is on its own, but on the left we have 90 and 90, those are like terms, and 3x and x, those are like terms. So 90 plus 90 is 180, 3x plus 1x is 4x. Now we have to start doing our opposites. I'm going to rewrite the equation up here so it's easier to work with. So when we do our opposites, we're trying to get the variable x alone. In most situations, you have to do the addition or subtraction piece first. So this 180 is adding, and we have to do the opposite and subtract it from both sides. What you do on the left side of the equal sign, you've got to do over on the right. So we have 4x equals 180. Now this 4 is multiplying by the x. The multiplication symbol is not shown. It's assumed you know a number next to a letter is really multiplying. So our opposite for this one is to divide. 180 divided by 4 is 45 degrees. Now again, this may not be our answer. We've got to go plug it back in to see what our actual answer is. They wanted the measure of angle 2. Angle 2 is just x, so it is just the 45 degrees. If they had asked for angle 1, we would have to do 3 times 45, which is 135 degrees. So for this problem, though, they asked for angle 2, so it would be just 45 degrees. So that concludes our discussion on angle measures.